Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Barbara Turley. It's great to have you join us today.
Fantastic to be here, Rocky.
Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
Sure. I'm Irish background for those who do love, everyone always tells me they love the Irish accent. But I live in Sydney, Australia. Have been here for 20 years. A very great place of the world to live, just a little far from the US and Europe and all those lovely places. But yes, a bit about my background. Look, I spent most of my career, I had a very long corporate career, so I wasn't one of those original entrepreneurs that tried 10 different businesses and threw spaghetti at the wall and all those things. I actually was in the financial industry, spent about 8 or 10 years as a trader. So I was an equity trader and then moved into the asset management side of the business, more in a sales role in the industry here in Sydney. And yeah, I had a very long career kind of in that world where I obviously learned a lot about how great companies get built, all that sort of thing. Definitely from a financial perspective, it was very useful for me. But I always had a dream of maybe doing my own thing one day. I just didn't know what that thing was. And I know lots of people have had that, they're like, I want to do my own thing, but I'm not sure what it is. And so what I did first, and really this was quite an accidental thing, I got an opportunity after the great financial crisis in 2009. I got a great opportunity with a number of other people to get involved in a startup in the financial industry that I was in. And, I got involved in that. I was an employee there. I was one of the shareholders, and I learned an incredible amount about how a great company gets built from that experience. I was an employee there for 5 years and I was in the sales team, and I worked with some incredible people from the financial industry. And to this day, I'm still, those people still are mentors of mine, are, friends of mine, and really learning how a great company gets built and goes from strength to strength was a very powerful experience for me. And it kind of whetted my appetite to then really say, right, I am going to try and do my own thing. So I left my corporate career and launched my first business, which I'm happy to say wasn't a flop, but it wasn't great. It didn't go very well. I sort of tried a couple of things. I had a business called Energize Wealth, and the plan was I wanted to inspire more women globally, which I think is a worthy cause, to be more interested in the financial industry, in money and how money works. And I still to this day am really passionate about global money flows and capital flows and things like that. And I think more people should take more of an interest in how money actually works. And because I think most people actually don't, they think they know how it works, but they don't really know how the global financial markets work. But I think I was just a little early. That was about 15 years ago. So it didn't really go that well. And I kind of lost passion for it. But in the process of doing that, I was actually doing some business coaching on the side. And what I discovered was most of the businesses that I was coaching, it didn't matter what industry they were in or whether they were product, service, online, offline. They were all different businesses, but they all fundamentally had the same problem. And the problem was that if they didn't hire staff, they were not going to be able to grow. But if they didn't grow, they couldn't afford to hire staff. And some of them were in this vicious cycle for like 10 years. And we've all known this plateau, and you start working harder, longer hours, trying to pedal forward, and you just can't keep up. And I said to them, if you don't optimize your time, basically, more effectively, you're not really going to be able to do the things that you want to do with me as a business coach. So I had heard that this was about the extent of it. I had heard that you could get assistance in places like the Philippines. I had read a couple of blogs about it, books, obviously Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week. I had actually read that book at the time. And I was quite inspired by that idea. So I went and I got myself an assistant online. And then I decided to try to get some for clients, only to help get them out of the weeds so that I could do more work with them. But invariably what happened was I had some of their friends start to call me, not asking me to be their business coach, but asking if I could get them one of those assistants. And I was kind of like, you could do this yourself. But I rapidly discovered that people didn't have the confidence, the time, the energy, the knowledge, the risk taking, I guess, to go do it themselves. And they were quite happy for me to do it for them. And I kind of found myself in this business called the Virtual Hub 10 years ago, before I knew I was in this business. It sort of formed organically by itself. And one morning I woke up and I was like, I'm going to pivot. This is it. I'm closing this and starting this. And it was like that overnight. And we'd no website or anything. It was nothing really then. And just an offer to do something for businesses to help get them out of the weeds. And, rolling forward 10 years, we're 350 employees now in the Philippines. We have clients all over the world. Delighted to say that you were one of them, Rocky, and, many success stories in doing this for clients. So that's the quick journey.
You know what? We'll get into the full journey and we'll talk about that pivot. You also use profit first in your business. How did that come to be? Because you're a financial person. So usually financial people should know how to do this without having to go use systems like Profit
Yeah.
First.
Yeah. I mean, look, one of the lessons I think I've learned as well from this whole experience over the years is that two things actually. Number one, the skills that we all have different skills, and we all assume that everyone has the same skills that we do, right? So I learned that by going, doesn't everyone know how to build operations? Doesn't everyone know how to protect their cash flow? Like, surely these things were very intuitive for me. But I discovered that other people, have skills that I don't have in other areas, but they're not very good at these things. But having said that, the second lesson I learned is it's also really dangerous to assume that like little knowledge is a dangerous thing, actually. Like, if you know a little bit about it, or you know quite a bit about it, but you're not an expert at it, that also can be dangerous. So from the profit first perspective, I kind of came into business going, well, I'm ex financial industry. I know what I'm doing, right? I did read profit first and was like, yeah, I've got this, understood the concepts very quickly, and kind of had that intuitive nature about, money in, money out, what's happening in the middle, and where's the profit. I did know that, and I was very focused on that from day one. But having said that, as the business got bigger, now this is the interesting point, as the business got bigger, and I have a fantastic COO who's here in Sydney who works with me, who has a very strong financial background, much more than me. So more of an accounting style background. And in working with him, I realized, wow, there are things I didn't know because I'm not a finance accounting type financial industry person. There were holes. And I was like, gosh, you really do need to focus on this more so than I even had been, even though I was still quite good at it. So those are the kinds of learnings. And I was saying to you, I might have to go and reread the book again just to make sure that we're on track. But the point is that I did have the intuitive sense that, you need to watch money in, money out, cash burn, future thinking, like, are we going to make payroll? I mean, I have a lot of people, so payroll is sacred. So, we always have to have very strong systems and processes in place around billing and things like that to make sure that we meet payroll.
And that is important. That's, I think, the one thing, bookkeeping doesn't keep people up at night. Making payroll does, right?
Yes,
It's
yes,
the outcome that you've got to deal with. And that's one of the advantages of Profit First. It makes sure that you
yeah,
have the cash there when you need it and that it's
yeah.
ready to go. And that's a big part of it.
I think as well, like most businesses, even though the advice, of course, is to have like runway and, X months of, operating. And in an ideal world, it's almost like in a fantasy land that most businesses would have that. But the reality is that usually most businesses, and I've been through this, you're skating close to the wind most of the time. But if it goes wrong, the risk is that you blow that business up in 2 months. It can be going great, great, great. And I learned this in the equity markets being a trader. Things can be going great, great, great. And then all of a sudden, like down the elevator shaft, and you can get in trouble very quickly if the wind changes and you're not in a good financial position in the business.
And that is very true. I've seen that
Mm,
multiple times. If you're skating on the edge and 1 month is down 50%, 2 months down at 50%,
you're
you're
gone.
100, yeah, you're
Yeah.
gone if you don't have lines of credit, some other source of money, something else. It doesn't take that long to knock you out. And until it happens, most business owners look at you like you're talking crazy because they
Mm,
haven't ever had to feel the fact that all of a sudden it happens. And it happens in every industry, and it happens for 100 different reasons: technology, tariffs, COVID,
yeah.
health. All of these things have massive reasons to do that. And so it
Yeah.
definitely
I,
works.
I
Go ahead.
think as well, there's tension. This tension there is between, and having been on a trading floor, I know what it is to take risk, right? So there's always this tension between risk taking to grow a business and conservative nature in the financials to keep it sustainable. And I suffer that tension a lot because I would be a risk taker. So I'm like, well, we've got the cash, let's go do this, or let's, and I've had to balance that tension a lot over the years to go, like, just be careful how much risk I'm going to take in this sort of a situation.
I'm guessing you're familiar with disc profile, the
We
personality
did
test.
disc. Yes.
Huh?
Yes, we disc profile all our people. Yeah, we're very familiar with disc.
I'm high D, high C,
Yeah.
which is
Right. Yeah,
weird in the
that's
sense
that
that
tension.
it's that tension that says, show me it can be done and let's test it and prove it, and I'll give you a gas pedal and we'll go.
Yes.
But
That's a
until
good
you
way to
prove
be.
it, we are not going to let you go wild, because I can tell you, and we want to know that it's real. It's not we're just
Yes.
chasing the rabbit because it looked good, but we never tested, proved it out, and made sure that it was good. So that's a
Yeah.
big part of it. Now, you started off, you said, as a coach for business owners.
Yes.
What
Yeah.
were you helping them with?
I think, I had a bit of business acumen. I don't know why a few people asked me. I didn't even go out looking for that. A few people asked me, would I help them? And invariably, it started out as kind of very vague. And then invariably, when I would go in to help a business, I would realize that we can't work on strategy. We can't work on strategy until we fix this mess that is inside. And it was all operational mess. And then I realized that the reason you can't, like, people would have had a lot of failures hiring people, including going offshore and hiring assistants. Eventually, I found that people would say, well, I've tried that, and I tried to get a VA and it was a disaster. And there are lots of reasons why it can be a disaster. And those stories are real, and I've suffered them myself. But a lot of the reason, assuming you have a good person who shows up at work and does the right thing every day. So let's put that aside. That's a HR issue if that's not working. But a lot of the issues that businesses have are messy operations, lack of systems, processes, frameworks. And entrepreneurial people naturally shy away from process and operations because it's boring. They want to hire A players and just let them do their thing. And I'm like, yeah, you got to build a car. You got to build a race car and then put people in to drive the race car. You know what I mean? And that's not only a better business that's less stressful to run, but it's worth vastly more when you go to sell that business. The asset value of doing it this way is way higher. If you've got a messy business that is a race car, but it's a mess under the hood, it's not worth as much. Someone's going to try and buy that and clean it up. That's what they're going to do.
And we are big fans of you build systems and processes and you put the people in to run them. And, you're talking about the race car. When that car pulls into the pit, you know
Yeah.
how fast and how quick they can turn it around, gas it, and get it moving. And that communication. You don't have a good pit crew, your race is over. It doesn't matter how good a driver you are and how good your car is. If you
Yeah.
can't get in and out, that's a problem. And that's a system and a process that's built to be
Yeah.
able to do that. And I think you're correct. A lot of business owners, they say we'll build that later. Later
Oh,
never
no.
comes, or it gets so messy that they're like, there's no way I can change this. And so
That's
then it
exactly right.
becomes really, really difficult to make that. So
And
one of the
here's
things, go ahead.
the other thing from that mess, if I could just say, then what happens is you're left in a situation where the only choices you have in hiring are to go to pay a lot of money for someone who really, really is quite very good or has a lot of IP to come in and do a role for you. But invariably, those people come in when A players who are like your serious people in the business that are going to push this business forward, when you hire those people and they come into an almighty mess inside, they don't actually like it. That's when you get disengagement and you get these low scores and people a bit overwhelmed and not that happy with it. And in addition, they will invariably spend half their day doing stuff that should and could be done by an assistant with a great process and great machines. So then you're not optimizing the money you're spending on all these people, all your A players. The money you're spending, you're blowing up too much money there when you could structure things better.
And I think that's the big thing about having an assistant is you get rid of all of your, I'm not going to say low value work, but work
Yeah.
that someone else can do that you don't necessarily need to do, and they can do it at a much lower cost than an A player is going to be.
Absolutely, yes. And then your A player, when you do hire them, even if that A player is yourself, you want to make sure that your time and energy and the investment you're making in your A players or you, and that's not to say your assistant can't be an A player too, by the way, that's a different thing. But I'm talking about your key roles that are driving a business forward. You have to optimize for their time and energy to ensure the return on investment on your human capital budget is right for the business. And this is getting into this profit first thing. Like, the most expensive asset any business has actually is its people, but it's the one that nobody's optimizing for. I find, people are just paying out money on this and not realizing that you could get more capacity out of your people strategy.
And sometimes it depends on how they're doing it. And here's a question to you. Who should build the process? I've heard both ways, because to me, I'm like, I'm going to build a process and I'm going to put a person in. Some people are like, well, I'll just tell them what needs to be done and I'll let them build a process and manage it. And I'm like, you do realize most people don't know how to build processes. And so I think that's kind of the problem. But then as the business owner, how do you build all these processes?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm going to start with this. You need to start with a philosophy that A business is a collection of people, like you say, the race car thing. You know, if you were to hire the pit crew and ask them to come up with their own processes, they'll do it. It just won't be, it won't be as slick, right? So it requires a collaborative approach on, you know, across a business to go like, which boat are we rowing? Which direction are we rowing? What's the speed we're all rowing at? Like there has to be this thinking throughout the business, even if it's just you and an assistant. Now, you're good at building process. So am I, right? I'm good at systems and processes. An assistant can be, I just am not sure it'll be the most optimal process, but you can, if you're not very good at it, but you know what you want done, the easiest way to start is to simply video yourself doing it and then ask an assistant to try to put that into a process. But don't stop there. Then you've got to come back together and you've got to iterate that process and deepen it and then wait for mistakes. Here's the trick. Wait for the mistakes, because the mistakes are going to show you where there's a hole in the process that you didn't realize that you had IP thinking during doing it that that person doesn't have. And you now need to put that in there. But usually people stop there. When the mistake happens, they're like, the person can't do it. Doesn't work. And I'm like, no, deepen the process.
Interesting.
Painful. I mean, if you haven't done it and you've got a whole business running, eat the elephant one bite at a time and just start in one area, you know?
Yeah, that was an interesting, I had gone through some other VAs before, you know, the one that we used through your agency. And a lot of it was they didn't follow the process,
Yeah.
or they struggled with parts of the. Now, I think the problem there is we hired the wrong people. They just didn't have the capabilities of doing that. And it's funny because when I picked the person that I've been working with, they had sent me 3 people and they actually suggested I picked another person. And I kind of vetoed them. And I said, no, I said, I want this person instead of that person. And I gave them the reasons why and so forth. And then they came back and said, okay, yeah, I think you might be right.
Okay.
And it was also about fit. Like,
Yeah,
how
you
are
have to have
we
the right
going
fit.
to, right.
Yeah.
It was about fit. It was about excitement level. It was about all of that. I actually went through, and because I'm a systems person, I created all the videos. I laid out everything step by step because I was already using that system for me to manage all the things that I was doing. Now that I knew that system worked, I could put it onto another person. And then we could see, did I correctly tell them how to do it? And we've constantly iterated, improved, and made better. And sometimes we screw up. And I'm okay with that. But we always have checks and balances.
Yeah, you have to. There's the oversight piece. Like it's kind of the missing piece of the puzzle. Usually in delegation, people go, well, I told them what to do. That's not delegation, right? That's just sort of barking an order, really. A delegation is a complex beast that requires 2 people or several people to focus on systems, processes, oversight, reporting, results, feedback, collaboration, communication. I mean, there's a lot to it. But when you get it right, I mean, people say to me, I don't have time for all of that. And I go, yeah, but you know, the thing is, I'm telling you that if you don't make time today, in 12 months' time, your business will be exactly the same as it is today, and you'll still be in the weeds. So you have 2 choices. You either want to stay where you are, or you take the pain now and you grow. Like, and the only way to grow is to get delegation right. The only way.
And that's true. Now, you've grown. You've had some impressive growth rates in the past. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Sure. So in the early years, we grew really quickly. But it was the wrong type of growth, to be honest, and that's a lesson too. You know, there were things I learned, although I was good at systems and processes, I wasn't very good at hiring. Interestingly, in this business that I'm in, I no longer do the hiring. Let's just say I created a system for that and then allowed people that are, I wanted to give everyone a job. That was the problem. I just had too much feel in there. So it grew very quickly, and then I had to kind of pare it back in, you know, years 2 and 3 and fix a lot of things. And then we had some explosive growth. There's been years we've grown by 50%. There's been years we've grown by 20%. But on the whole, the growth has been great. The last year and a half, I was saying to you off air, has been more of a consolidation phase, I would say. A lot of businesses, I think, have experienced this in 24 and 25. That we're talking in. But what's been interesting, I think, as the industry has exploded that we're in. So there's a lot of new players that have come on the scene in the last 5 years since COVID. But in addition, there's way more businesses open to it. But I think the direct market has taken off as well. A lot of people are trying to almost go further down the cost curve, which is fine. You can do that too. But that can sort of blow up in people's faces for a myriad of reasons as well. But larger companies are also now thinking very strategically about this idea of people optimization and realizing that, if you know the scores globally around disengagement, quiet quitting, overwhelm, all of these things, people think it's a symptom of bad cultures. I'm like, no, it's a symptom of bad delegation and no bad systems in businesses. Too many wrong people doing the wrong stuff. And I think a lot of particularly mid-sized businesses are now getting onto this, going, if we want to retain our key people, we can't pay them more, and they keep getting taken by people who can pay more. But actually what you need to do is create an environment that allows them to use their time and energy to do the things they want to be doing, that they're great at, that will drive your business forward and lift them out of the shackles of the busy work. And it's this support layer concept that I keep going on about, going, this is, if you have a support layer for your team, be it one or several assistants, and then process map things, systemize things, and delegate down, then you've got a real race car if you do it that way. And your people will be happier.
Yeah, nobody will do what they don't love doing, including the business owner. And I know that because most of them don't like doing the financials, so they ignore them and they think that'll solve it, but it doesn't. And it's true. I don't like doing the things I don't like doing. And so I stay away from them. But if I can hand them off to somebody who does like doing it, then life becomes next easier and it all works out. What have you found? So you've helping people find the assistance. What are you finding when it works, and what are the people struggling with when it doesn't work? Because I'm guessing it's not necessarily the person you're putting there, but the person managing the person, so to speak.
Yeah, there's actually a whole host of, it's actually quite difficult to get this right. We were talking off air about this. It's easy to get a home run on one assistant, right? Or two or three. It's very difficult to do this at scale, right? So, businesses that are trying to put in 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 20 of them, that's quite hard on your, not only from a recruitment perspective, managing them, all that sort of thing. So there's two issues when it doesn't work, right? So let's look first at the business owner side. There is a lack, this concept of delegation is vastly misunderstood. Like I was saying, there's a lot to it. And people need to put the work in to master this art of delegation. I mean, you've had to master lots of other things in a business to try to grow it. But I would say to any business owner, if you are in business, the job of the business owner is actually this stuff, is building the business, right? So, and part of that is ensuring that you have the right machine, the right framework systems, all the things that we've been talking about. Then putting people in. So over the years, I discovered now we actually are not a recruitment agency. So we don't take client briefs and then go out to the market and try and find what they're looking for. We don't do that at all. I stopped doing that in the early years because I realized how difficult that is, even vastly more difficult than what we do. So many years ago, I just turned the model on its head and I thought, you know what, we're just going to go out to the market and hire for ourselves. So we actually hire people month on month for us at the Virtual Hub. We have our own training academy. And even with people with experience, everybody must go through the same. They all go through our training academy, because what you find is resumes can say anything, but skills, what they're actually like.
Especially in the world of ChatGPT.
Absolutely, right? And some people interview really well. Other people don't, but they're quiet achievers, right? So we have our own training program, and we basically cultivate our own assistants. They're all full-time employees of our company. And only when we feel they're ready do we start to sort of introduce them and what we sort of say is they're there servicing our client accounts. Actually, yes, they look and feel, we integrate them like they're an employee in your business, but really they're very much part of a massive culture that we have inside our company. And the reason we do that is because training is key, right? So it doesn't matter what somebody has in their resume. Training is vital as things are moving in this world very rapidly. But also when you're training somebody, you get to see nuance in their personality that may become a problem later, that you will not see in a recruitment process. So we find that quite effective to ensure that all the people we have that we eventually present to clients, we know vast majority of those are going to work out in terms of they have the care factor to actually look at the steps, go through the steps in a process. They also are trained as part of the Virtual Hub to act like a TVHer sort of thing. So that's what we say. We call them TVHers. So we're also training on this concept of if there is a process, I mean, you might think this is ridiculous that we have to train on this, but we train on every sort of nuance to make sure that the success of this is going to be successful, because we don't want the big churn rates. We need the success rates. So What I'm saying is that it's difficult to get it right at scale. It's also difficult to get it right with one if you don't do elements of what I'm talking about. You know, you don't need to do all of that when you're bringing on your own team. We do it for our clients, so they love that because people arrive kind of ready and hit the ground running, so to speak, to a certain extent. Where it fails, though, even with all the work we do, is when we try to put somebody into a client account that is not ready for that systems wise.
Do you find that you have to find people who will follow systems, or can you train people to follow systems?
You have to hire for that. That's a sort of a, I mean, you can train people to get better at it. But again, it's that tension between conscientiousness, right? And you want to, like, so most people want an assistant that will show, it depends. Some people want an assistant that's going to show loads of initiative, right? That's a certain type. It depends on the client account. So like for us, we get client accounts that are very process driven, where they literally just want a person who's coming to work every day, who really enjoys following process and is that type of personality. Others may want like an EA or someone who can fly by the seat of the pants of a startup entrepreneur and do all sorts of different things. Now that's a different personality type and skill set to the process driven one. So we're always having this kind of tension between how many do we have, and we have to have a mix of those because we get a mix of clients that want different things. And I don't know how we've made this work over the years, but generally speaking, we make that work.
Is that because you let someone else deal with it?
Well, I've built the systems though. I know how to I've looked at results of systems and tweaked things, but I allow others to do interviews and we've got automated testing things and we've got all sorts of ways of using people and systems to weed that out. And of course, AI is in now, so that's just been a game changer completely.
How are you using AI?
Yeah, we're using a lot of it. We're huge fans. You would think that when ChatGPT first launched, I did almost have a nervous breakdown thinking, this is the moment that we all failed. You know, rolling forward, I think everyone has realized that AI is fantastic, but it's an augmentation tool. You still need people apart from the fact you need people to build the AI agents, that's a big problem for businesses. They love the idea of it, but you need expertise to actually build that stuff. But it's an augmentation tool. So even our assistants, we train them all now on AI tools. And we're doing more and more of that. And we've built our own agents to assist our people so that we optimize the time and energy of our team as well. So we're walking our own talk, in what we do.
And I think that's why our partnership has been so successful, because I built custom chat GPTs for
the
them
assistant
to use.
Yeah.
And I train them and I help to make sure that they get updated. And I give them the right prompts and we change the prompts if they aren't correct, or we add to them, and we're constantly evolving with that and updating the instructions. But by building those and then working with that, it really has helped to ensure that it gives us the right results. That we get the right results. And so it makes it easier for them to follow the process. And then I just have to double check the final results. And it works.
I think
really, really well.
What's key there actually that I want listeners to hear is that you're not expecting your assistant to be the prompt engineer. Now, this is the hole in the industry right now that's happening, where everyone's like, I want an assistant who can use AI. I'm like, yeah, that's great, right? But just be careful that you realize that AI is a big beast that requires strategy, requires process development, requires knowledge. The AI, they've made it sound like, oh, AI is this amazing thing that you just shove it in your business. It's going to be amazing. But it actually requires quite a level of expertise that is beyond the scope of an assistant role. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have people that are able to build AI, right? But if I was trying to sell that, it's out of scope for an assistant role. That's the point. We're trying to get our people to be able to good at using it. But some clients have an expectation that we can teach them to be prompt engineers. And we're like, no, that's not, then you're not an assistant anymore.
Then you're in a different role.
Then you're a prompt engineer. And if you want a prompt engineer, I think you need to be realistic about that. So it's just this kind of misalignment of expectations of what an assistant role is. Because the word VA, you see, in virtual assistant has morphed from, anyone from with a heartbeat that can type to someone who can code an app. And that's fundamentally not true. Like an assistant role is an assistant. It's not a strategist or a IP-driven execution type person.
Because AI is such a game changer, I actually, when I'm on calls with clients, as we're going through things, I'm teaching them how to use AI just to help them improve their profit, do things faster. And the one thing I've learned is people look at me in amazement and go, I can ask that. I can do that.
You
I'm
can
like,
ask it anything.
yes, you can ask that. You can do that. They're just shocked at what is possible. And I think it really comes down to a simple problem. We haven't taught people how to critically think and how to ask great questions. And those are the two skills you like. I'm not a prompt engineer. I just know how to interact with ChatGPT at a
Hmm.
high level by asking the right questions in a way that will get me the results I want and being
Hmm.
highly definitive in I want X, Y, and Z, and I want it this way in this voice with this type of expertise. And what I tell people is if you treat ChatGPT like a 5-year-old and you ask a question like you would a 5-year-old, you're going to get an answer like a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
you ask a question like a PhD, you'll get a PhD answer. And I think that's where people don't
I
get it.
think
You got
those
to build it.
A lot of people struggle though with, when you see something that like you get a result of something, you've asked somebody to do something, it comes back, it's not what you want. A lot of people struggle to articulate why it's not what they want and what they actually want. So they struggle
Mhm.
to even go, I want it in this voice. They just go, I don't like that. That's not what I wanted. And they cannot articulate what it is. That's a tricky one. We all have to learn how to ask better questions, but that's actually harder than people think, for a lot of people, I think.
I'm learning that. I didn't realize it.
Mm,
Just like a lot of things I didn't realize. And that's the truth. That's kind of where we started. We don't realize where our natural skills truly
yes.
lie and where other people might struggle. And so that's been a big part of my journey is figuring out where are those value adds that I can provide, and we just give them as value adds to our clients above and beyond. And who knows,
Hmm.
maybe it'll change where I end up one day, but for now I love what I do. One last thing I want to talk about. You guys have a very large or very high net promoter score. So
Yeah.
can you just talk a little bit about what the net promoter score is and how you can get such a great number?
Yes. Okay. So the backstory on this. So I'm a big fan of the scaling up methodology. I'm not sure if you know Vern Harnish, who wrote Scaling Up, the book.
We have it here
Yes.
somewhere.
Vern
Yep.
is one of our, so I read the book, accidentally stumbled upon the book, like greatest game changer of my life reading this book many, many years ago. And I kind of after reading the book, I kind of rebuilt the company and started on the journey of scaling up. And in scaling up, there is, the people pillar the people pillar took us about 2 years to kind of deal with because it's so enormous and we're a people business. So it was an enormous thing to do. But what came out of that, I kind of learned a lot about net promoter score. And, it's basically a score that you can use it with employees, by the way, as well. We have an ENPS, which is our employee net promoter score. We also use it with applicants and candidates to discover people who apply for a job with us. How would they score us? And it's kind of a rating that people would say, like, how likely are they to sort of recommend you to a friend, or, and it's made up of uh, contributor people who are positive, people who are detractors, and people who are neutral. And the overall score is what your average is. So of course you want to have, like, lots of contributors. So so over time, I mean, I didn't launch doing it with clients until I had sort of, you want to you want to have a high success rate internally with what you're doing and your client delivery, and your success rates before you go doing this. You want to kind of have a sense. Now you can do it first, but if you could get results that you're not happy with, right? You could get feedback that can be destabilizing for your ego. You could get smashed by your clients or your employees in doing it. But there is value in having that too, because I've always thought the gold is in the negative comments that you get, right, from people. The complaints is where the gold is, because that tells you what to fix. But we sort of tried to game it a bit and do a bit of work on our delivery first. And then we worked into our client experience journey. At various points in the client journey, we are talking to the clients about, our client success managers speak to the clients, and they actually ask them a series of questions on those calls. And what we're trying to glean, we want the honest truth. We want the gold. And we do ask people to rate us. And our net promoter score, I mean, it's 87 or something at the moment, but it's always tracking between 87 and 94. I mean, it's always within those. I mean, anything over 70 is considered world class. So we're very proud of it, and we work very hard to maintain it. It is one of the, we operate also over off objectives and key results. And it is one of the key results that we have as part of our strategy to make sure that we keep our NPS scores on the employee side and on the client side high.
And
Hard. You got to keep working at it though. And there's always feedback, and you're like, oh god damn it, that thing. We got to fix that thing. Yeah.
you do. I'm a big fan of scaling up. And scaling up is very similar to traction.
Yes. I
Different
love both
size
of those. Yeah.
businesses. I think it's the one that you are most likely to implement is the one that's best for you. So whatever works for you. And it's funny, coming out of the world of corporate, they used to send out these annual surveys and people would provide real feedback and they just didn't like it.
Oh yeah, of
So
course
they'd
you don't,
ignore it.
because your ego gets completely bruised, and you have to
Yeah.
accept that though. Like I've had terrible feedback and gone, oh my god, it's like somebody telling you your baby's ugly. I mean, it's literally
Yes.
as bad as that, right?
Yeah.
But you have to get over it. Like, you got to allow yourself a few days to just digest all of that, and then to go into acceptance mode and go, okay, now we roll our sleeves up and we go to work. How do we re-engineer what it is that we do so that nobody ever feels this thing that they said again? And you may have to go back to your sales process, your lead gen. You may have to go right to the front door and figure out, where did this go wrong, and re-engineer all your processes to eradicate that issue. But if you do that constantly, we've done that constantly for years now, that's how you get to a really great business.
And that's correct. It's constant iteration. And I find for most businesses, people think this is a chasm. It's not a chasm. It's little teeny things, especially when you know what little things are screwing it up. You make
Yeah.
small changes, you can get big results. This is not like a monstrous project.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you've created a massive mess, which is a whole nother story. But if,
Yeah.
for many businesses, a lot of small changes, which are not difficult, result in some great results.
We've had like a small tweak to our sales positioning, and it has changed the game down the track, like of what a client thought they were getting. Misaligned expectations and things can lead to, and you might think a client complaint or something like that, and you're like, oh, that's not true. We don't, but the person feels how they feel. I mean, there's something along the chain that's happening. It's painful, but it's very worthwhile doing the work.
And at the end of the day, that's what you have to do. If people would like to learn more about your business or see how to get their own virtual assistants, what's the best way for them to find you?
Sure. So the quickest way is to jump onto thevirtualhub.com. We've got lots of resources over there, and you can book a call with one of our team. We have Cecily and we have Joe, who are fantastic on our team, and they can help you to figure out whether you're ready for this and whether we're right for you and all those sorts of things. And if you want to follow more of sort of the philosophy and my sort of thought leadership, LinkedIn is where I share a lot of that. And I'll be sharing parts of this podcast over there on LinkedIn as well. So you can follow me. I'm just Barbara Turley on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for listening to the entire unedited video of the Profit Answer Man podcast. You can actually get the full podcast in audio only format here on YouTube or any other of your favorite podcast players. Don't forget to go check out episodes 1 through 13. They lay out the foundation of Profit First in the book and how to get started. In addition, we've got hundreds of episodes for you to check out. And if you remember to subscribe, you'll always be updated when we put a new one out every single week. Thanks for listening. Have a profitable week.